Welcome back to The Average. This is Tim,
This is Bryce.
and today we're going to dive into the first part of our Barbenheimer special. It's not really a special, this is just the first movie.
Yeah, it's the first movie. Whatever.
Yep. So we're talking about Barbie today. We're going to take a sharp left turn into the patriarchy about halfway through, but we will come back in a couple weeks with our Oppenheimer review. So
Yes.
Stick around, get both of those. Can't wait to talk about both of them with you. If you saw the movie, we don't have your score yet. So you need to hit that link tree in our Instagram page, fill out your review of Barbie and Oppenheimer, and tell us what you thought of the film.
Kind of would have been cool to do like a special longer episode and just doing both of them at once. That would have been a cool idea.
No, that definitely would have been. I
Man,
agree
great
with you
marketing
there.
idea. Dang it.
Man, we suck.
Yeah, we do. That's okay.
But to you
Anyway.
followers out there, thanks for sticking around.
Yes, always. So anyway, Tim, would you like to do the honors of breaking down this movie for us?
Yeah. Okay, I'll break it down. We show up at the movie theater expecting to watch a movie about a toy that it becomes sentient. You know, we've seen Toy Story and, kind of anticipating the significance of what Barbie's meant to girls growing up and how it connected them to their mothers and the significance of both the unrealistic standards that Barbie put on beauty and also the significance of why Barbie has become so popular and why it's still played with decades later. Instead, the movie takes a sharp left turn, like I previously said, into the patriarchy for absolutely no reason.
And disclaimer, like you can't talk about this movie without talking about the political side of it. Like it's just impossible. So listen, neither of
It's
us want
just
to talk.
unfortunate.
Yeah, neither of us want to talk about this, okay?
And I give you full right to turn this podcast off right now if you're bothered by the fact that we're two males discussing the Barbie movie. You can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, which in itself is actually quite hilarious and ironic.
We did see it with our wives. That is actually why it's the first one. My wife was ready to go see it opening weekend because she had been looking forward. She had been really looking forward to this Barbie movie.
Yeah, she was like into it.
She didn't think it was terrible, but she was also disappointed. So, but let's go ahead and dive in because I'm sure we'll break this apart in the score a little bit. For the most part, just looking at it, you and I aren't too far off. I was a little more generous and had a better time than you did, but let's go into it. So we both agree on the story.
Trash.
Which we just broke down for you. So we both agree. I gave the story a 2. So on our scale, I like to think of 0 is just the worst. Okay, 0 is a legitimate score. It is.
Yes.
There is no story. It's just awful. It's unwatchable story. 1 would be awful. So it's unwatchable to awful, as in it could have a story, but that story is just either it's horribly offensive and should have never been made, or it's just like really stupid, doesn't make sense, really, there's a lot of ways it could fall under awful. 2 to me is just bad. Okay, it's bad. I wouldn't consider it awful, but I think this movie had elements of a good story, and we saw it for maybe a minute, minute and a half, and then we just abandoned it. And I'm sure there are people out there who love the rallying speech at the end about how hard it is to be a woman, and while I don't necessarily agree with all of the stuff that might have been mentioned in that, I'm not sure what it had to do with this story. Because the entire story, we're going full spoilers in this, of Ken coming to the real world and immediately learning about the patriarchy. And then, I thought it was funny that he was disappointed that it had nothing to do with horses, even though I'm not exactly sure where he got that, other than there was a police officer on a horse.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I can't remember, man. I blocked this movie out of my head for the most part.
That whole part of him just discovering the patriarchy did not honestly contribute to the story, in my opinion. I think this was much better served in the brief flashbacks that we saw of how a Barbie united a mother and a daughter, and how the Barbie that we meet is feeling neglected. You know, she's feeling neglected as those two start to separate ways. The girl is entering her teenage years, no longer thinks of her mother the same. I think that's the story. That is the story here, that having taken the Toy Story route about toys being significant to their owners and how they bring people together and how they create memories and stuff, that's the story here. But unfortunately, we saw it for maybe a grand total of a minute, as I said. Other than that, the story's not worth showing up for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna. You said most of how I felt about it. I was pretty on board for the for the first like 15 to 20 minutes of this movie. Honestly, I thought it was somewhat funny and somewhat clever and self-aware, which was kind of nice. And man, it just kind of goes downhill after that. I mean, I think there was genuinely a good story within here. Like, I don't know what it is, but just the idea of like the Kens trying to take over Barbie Land is just like a funny idea. And like, I don't know. It's just, it's like a weird baby between The Matrix and, oh, what was that movie? Something Darling. Don't worry, darling. Yeah, Don't Worry, Darling. It's like some weird baby between those two, which all just stems from The Matrix as a storyline. And yeah, this one just, it just didn't hit. Like, I was just disappointed. I was hoping for something a little bit more funny, and throughout the entire thing, and I say that just because it wasn't funny. I didn't laugh at a lot of the jokes. The story itself just kind of turned into this really bitter and narcissistic story arc. And honestly, by the end, I felt like the Barbies were more of the bad guys than anything. But it's still like
that because you're a cis white male.
Here we go. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm just mostly, if anything from this movie, this isn't the worst movie this year. Let's just get that out of the way first of all. I think I'm just mostly disappointed with the potential this movie had. I think there's a good story in here, and I think there's actually some good like lessons to be learned from the story. I just felt like it was written in such a way that just felt very bitter. So yeah, we can move on from that.
Okay. So let's move into the character and how compelling the character story was. So looking at this now, I was a little generous.
I was gonna say, what are you scoring this on?
Because I really don't remember the character arc much at all. But I think I gave it a 4. Oops.
Yeah,
I think I gave it a 4 because there is a character arc. Like, Barbie starts as a toy and she's living her perfect Barbie dream world, and everything is super fake, and you know, it's very meta in that approach. But then by the end of it, she decides she wants to be human. So there is a character arc there. There is some growth as far as the way she perceives things. And I thought there was a little bit of growth with Ken too, even though it was honestly kind of emasculating. Like, we went from Ken being nothing and all he is defined as is his love for Barbie, and then at the end,
right,
she rejects him, but he really doesn't go anywhere after that. Like, there's no follow-up for what happens with Ken. But he went on this journey of like discovering the patriarchy, kind of becoming the villain of the story for no real reason. And then yeah, you know, 4 is definitely a little generous. I think I get into things like these. I just like absorb myself in them, and I'll admit, like, I was emotionally moved, but I don't remember why. Like, I remember tearing up at one of the final scenes. I think it was when Barbie was talking to her creator.
Yeah.
But even then, like I found that scene moving, but even then I also found it like it was missing something. It just didn't quite hit the way I hoped it would. It wasn't all the way there. It still felt like when the creator was talking about creating Barbie because of her daughter, you know, I did find that moving. That's why I remember that now. But yeah, I was a little generous with the 4, but I think that's why I gave it the 4.
So, as someone who isn't generous with his scores that he hands out, sync for effect. I gave it
I'm not
a.
here to hate on movies. I'm here because I love movies.
I'm here because I
So-
love them too, so that's why I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. Because at a certain point, I just kind of lost sight of what exactly the arc of these characters were throughout the whole movie. Because while I do agree, I think there is a good message in here about standards for women. I think there is a fair, like, good story in there about that. But then on the other side, we have a story arc about men being men as well, and then we have a story arc about, you know, how men take over everything and they rule everything, and sometimes you can't tell if it blurs the line between parody or just actual like an actual conversation women might have with each other. I just felt like the arcs were unfocused a little bit, and
Oh, absolutely.
I kind of just lost. At a certain point, I lost track of just the journey of these characters and where they were going. Like, it just kind of felt like stuff was being thrown at the screens, and these characters were just, they were going here and there and wherever for whatever reason. I'm like, I don't want to act like it's just some shallow like story, like character arc. Like, there is a arc in there. I just didn't find it compelling at all. I felt like the messaging got very convoluted as the movie continued to go on, for the characters in themselves, and I just felt like it lost focus. So I am not going to overscore this with a 3 and just kind of sit at a 2 for this one.
Okay, I think that's fair.
So anyway, leads us
All right.
into music and sound design.
So
Go ahead.
I enjoyed a lot of the as far as I know, they were original songs. I thought they were appropriately placed. I gave
Mostly.
the music a 4. I actually, and I gave it a 4 because I thought Ken's song at the end was kind of brilliant and hilarious. I I enjoyed it a lot. So I enjoyed how this movie almost had musical sensibilities, even though there were only 2 songs that like existed in that world. But yeah, I didn't hate the music. It's also not super memorable. So again, I think I was a little generous coming out of it. I'd say it's 3 or 4, but I do think the Ken song for me definitely is probably why I pushed it up to a 4.
Yeah, I left it at
Even
3.
though I can't remember that song now, so
Exactly, and that is exactly why I left it at 3. The music fit the movie. I can't deny that, and definitely some very catchy songs, I would say. But also I think there are some songs that are rather annoying as well, and so I just decided to leave it at 3. I don't find any of them really compelling. I'm not listening to any of them outside of the movie in itself. Yeah, I think it's forgettable for the most part, but definitely fits the movie. I can't deny that.
okay, so that's it for the music and sound design. Moving on to the editing and special effects. I actually gave this a 5 because I really appreciated the editing. I appreciated the effects that the Barbie, and I still think I agree with this one, is that like it looks fake.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to look fake because it is supposed to be like we're invading this toy world. And I appreciated that approach to it. I had no issues with that. I thought it was pretty well done, and it was pretty consistent when we're in the Barbie world. That's why I gave it a 5. It felt at many times like a stage play, and that's what it was going for. It was the Barbie world was meant to feel like some little girl has set this up, and that's the way it is. And like little things for me, like Ken running into the wave at the beginning and then just flying an insanely far distance felt like a kid's hands were involved in that.
Right.
And I appreciated those little touches. I thought it was clever. I don't really find any fault with the special effects. To say the editing probably could have been a little more polished, but it didn't take me out.
Yeah, I actually agree. I actually might have been a little too bland with this one. I gave it a 3 as well. I probably, and it definitely probably could have been a 4. I do appreciate some of the stuff that they did do with the editing and effects. I think the reason I ended up going down to a 4 was I was just kind of, I was a little overstimulated by the end of the movie.
Mad by the end of the movie.
Like, the issue I think is that I was thinking of other movies that have used a lot of like effects and trying to like compare it to this one. So one that came to mind right away was Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And I never really feel overstimulated with the editing and effects of that movie. And so yeah, I think I'm probably being a little harsh on it with giving it a 3. It could definitely be a 4, but I think I just kind of left like, okay, it was just a little too much for me in some areas, and I don't think it was always necessary. But I do want to give some shout out because there was some really good editing and even some good practical effects that they use, especially for like the travel sequences. I thought that was kind of clever and fun.
Those were super clever.
But yeah, I might have been harsh on that. So yeah, 3 out of 5 definitely could be a 4.
Okay, at least we can admit when we were wrong. So.
Yeah, we're not always right, except when we are.
Nope, but again, this is coming off our initial reactions and how we felt about it leaving the theater. So that definitely leads into my score for the script. I actually, unlike Bryce, this movie fit my type of humor. I don't know what it was about it. I was cracking up almost the entire movie. So from my story score, it was a 2. I thought the story was stupid. But the script I actually thought was hilarious. Things like Depression Barbie had me dying. It had like a really dark meta sense of humor at a lot of points, and I appreciated that. I thought it was pretty clever. I was laughing. If anybody has asked me, what I thought of Barbie, that is what I tell them. I tell them I did not care for the story so much because it was unnecessarily political. I did not care for the story, but I tell them that I did find it very funny. So that is why I gave the script a 4.
Yeah, I ended up giving it a 2 for a lot of the same reasons I gave the story a 2. Again, I was on board for most of the first 20 minutes of the movie. And again, after that, it just kind of went downhill. Like the story and much like the character arcs, the script just kind of loses focus at a certain point. And again, you could this is a movie where you could throw out something like, oh, it just wasn't made for me, I guess. That's just not always the case necessarily, and I think especially for this one, that's not the case. Again, it kind of left me wondering, like, is this what some women just sit and talk about at times? And again,
have you ever watched The View?
Yeah. It was just okay. There was a certain point at the the word patriarchy got thrown around like how many times? It was definitely over 1,000. It felt like
it was thrown around as much as the N-word is in Django Unchained.
Whoo, baby, that's a nice little mountain to climb there.
I'm sorry.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing. None of it bothered me at all. It just it just
I apologize for my dogs.
No, it's okay. I've been watching my dog too
outside. So
yeah, it just at a certain point, it just again felt like just a really bitter, self-righteous narcissist writing this movie, and it just like there's a certain point where like this big rant happens, and like I'm sure some of it is true, like for sure, but like it just was like this 5-minute rant that I don't see that in other movies happening. And again, it doesn't feel like it pertains specifically to the characters of this movie and their story. Sure, does it loosely somewhat tie into the movie? Yes, it does. I'm not denying that. But it just feels like these people who write this movie just needed to go to a session to where they could just vent the stuff going on in their life. And that's just what it feels like a lot with a lot of movies and shows now. It just feels like very bitter people writing shows and putting themselves in these roles and just complaining about the stuff in their life. Again, I'm not saying that I'm sure some of the stuff does hold water. That's not what I'm trying to say. And I'm not even hurt about any of the things that are said in this movie. But at a certain point, it's just like, okay, can we like focus on a story here that is consistent with how the movie starts out and, you know, can be clever and whatnot. Yeah, I don't know. I was checked out of the script, and like the jokes were getting stale at a certain point, and yeah, it just kind of got old for me. So I'm feeling comfortable with that 2 out of 5, honestly.
Okay. And I'm not trying to argue here. I wanted to bring up, like, you mentioned this rant and how I agree with you. It's not that we're arguing with anything that's mentioned in this rant.
Yeah,
but
no.
it did bother me that it was repeated over and over again as a way to unbrainwash the women from what Ken had been.
I feel like that was more of an insult to women. You know what I mean? Like,
it was. So here's where I'm gonna start to pick apart, and I lumped this into my story score because mainly my script score is based on how funny I found the movie. But I also, and it's totally fine if you disagree with me on this.
No, it's fine.
I found, and whether it was intentional or not, because I don't think it was, I think that the way the patriarchy was represented in this movie was just as fictional as Barbie's world, because the patriarchy that's described in this movie and is talked about in this movie, well, I'm not saying the patriarchy doesn't exist or whatever. I'm not getting into the politics of that. What I am saying is that the way it was represented in this movie, I actually found kind of funny because it's not my experience in the real world. And that's my experience as a Midwesterner. You know, I've never been to California. I don't know what Mattel Industries looks like.
Right.
But I found that the way they represented the Mattel CEO and how that is kind of like representation of the patriarchy or what the men are promoting when they try to turn Barbie Land into the patriarchy, I was like, this is a farce of the patriarchy. This is like a caricature of the patriarchy.
Right.
And so to a degree, I found it funny, but I also still found it entirely unnecessary to the story that they were trying to tell.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll even go out on a limb and even say, listen, this may be a reality for these people in Hollywood and their little bubble. And I do have empathy for that. Like, I don't just want to throw out the baby with the bathwater in that instance. Like, if that's the case, I could totally understand that, because obviously with all the things we found out over the past few years about Hollywood and their interesting ways of living.
Yeah.
It's I think it's fair to say that, that's definitely a possibility. But again, I just feel like if you start digging into the script and the interactions and how the story continues on, I just feel like there's just a lot of contradicting. Like, these people are supposed to be the people who run this entire, world right here. And all it takes is one guy coming in with this one really obscure idea, and there's no pushback or anything. It's like, I don't know. That kind of feels a little insulting to the message you're trying to send here. And yeah, I don't want to spend too much more time on it. Like, I feel like if you just dig into it more, there's just some holes to be poked, and there's like, it feels a little backhanded. It's like, okay, whatever. Like, I guess.
Yeah, and because I'm just out of curiosity, I was just curious because they really represented the Mattel people poorly. Really kind of fitting them into this negative patriarchal stereotype. And so I was just curious, who is the CEO of Mattel? And it is a man. And the CEO of Barbies Richard Dixon transformed Barbie and he was there for 23 years. Like, it has been male led. And
Right.
while the commentary on, you know what, maybe it's time for a woman to be in charge of it, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But also, you like, I can't help but feel like this just feeds back into what they're trying to say is the problem, is that you have a male CEO of Mattel who approved the representation of the male CEO of Mattel for this movie.
Right.
Mattel produced this, and so he's totally fine with it. He
Yeah.
like
Absolutely.
that rubs me worse than whatever the movie said.
Yeah.
Like, he's fine with you making him the villain. And that I don't know why that kind of makes me feel a little icky.
Well,
But it's just a little weird to me. Like, why isn't, if he's fine with that, why isn't he stepping down and let a woman actually run the thing? It just seems a little hypocritical. And to that point, the same thing, the way I feel about even bringing the patriarchy to the Barbie movie.
mm-hmm.
Like, this should be a movie that unites mothers and daughters, and it may still, but like, why bring the patriarchy in as the villain?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
It seems like you're feeding back into the patriarchy by even bringing it in.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
it's,
at the end of the day, for Mattel,
we're
like
getting
all
deep
that
into
all
this,
that
but
matters is the money. Like, I think it's as simple as that. They don't care at all about image at that point, because it's just a company. Like, it's not like Will Ferrell does not actually, doesn't look or probably even represent the guy necessarily, but who knows?
what do you mean? No,
Yeah.
his name is, he's Israeli American, and his name is Enon Kreis.
Okay, gotcha.
He was born in Tel Aviv, Israel. So
Okay,
yeah, he's
gotcha.
nothing like Will Ferrell.
Yeah, I mean, again, I get what they were going for. I feel like it fell flat, and I feel like, again, it's just a very unfocused mess of a story and script, for the most part. And I mean, if you enjoyed it, you enjoyed it. I mean, I'm sure what I think. Yeah, I'll get to it in the thoughts later. It's fine. Anyway, let's move on to acting.
We just took a sharp left turn.
Yeah, let's just. I was gonna let you go because I was tired anyway. So let's just go into acting. I'll kick us off here. I gave it a 3 out of 5.
That was harsh.
I mean, whatever. Sure, it can be a 4, I guess. I mean, I think everyone was cast pretty. I mean, like, let me bring that back down. Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling were cast perfectly for their roles.
There you go.
I'm cool with that. Yeah. Yep. Everyone else, I can, you could probably interchange people in and out, and I think that's mostly why I landed on 3. I also didn't care for the mom and daughter, as their performance. Like, I feel like for the most part, everyone was interchangeable outside of Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. That's kind of why I landed on a 3. Was it was their performance compelling? Yeah, it was pretty good, but yeah, you could give it a 4, I guess, if they just carried the movie that much for you. For me, they didn't really carry it that much. I mean, there's definitely movies out there, I feel like, where an actor can sell a movie for you to where it's better. This just wasn't really one, but they still did good. Everyone else, sure. Yeah.
So I gave it a 5 because Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling were perfect for Barbie and Ken.
Other end of the coin.
I think they were perfectly casted. They did an amazing job. I actually didn't mind the mother and daughter. I like America Ferrera. I believe that's who that was.
Was it? Kind of want to check now.
No, I think that was America Ferrera. Okay. I thought Michael Cera was actually hilarious.
Gotcha.
Will Ferrell was fine. He's always just fine.
I feel like Will Ferrell is such a divisive actor between a lot of people.
Yeah, I want to see him do some serious roles. Where I should have deducted not just 1 point, but 2, and met you with like the 3, was the casting of Kate McKinnon, who I can never ever stand ever.
Harsh, but
I can't stand her. She's obnoxious. I don't like her whatsoever, and she's always the same. Which she was appropriately cast as Weird Barbie, but that didn't make watching her any more tolerable.
I feel like that was a very personal attack there, and you just felt
I
like you had to get it out.
I don't know why. Like, she has always just rubbed me wrong. I do not like her acting. I've never liked her SNL skits. I've never liked her in movies. There's just, I don't know. I don't care for Kate McKinnon. So there.
Well, you heard it here heard it here first, folks. Tim wants Kate out of a job in Hollywood, so yeah, that's
I
harsh.
wouldn't miss her whatsoever.
Whew, man, you are just not letting up. Okay.
I'm not wishing her like death or ill will or anything.
Okay.
I'm just like, don't care for her. So
Well, let's go ahead and switch gears there then, and head into direction. I can kick us off on this one. I gave it a 2 out of 5. It kind of again bleeds into one of the biggest issues of this movie, and I just feel like there was no direction. Man, this okay. I'll say it because she's not here, but me and Megan saw Barbie and Oppenheimer together, and when she makes a comment after watching Oppenheimer, how does Oppenheimer feel shorter than Barbie did? I feel like that's all you really need for why I gave it a 2 out of 5. Again, I think there was a good story and a good idea here. I think there was a lot of potential for this to actually be a really fun and like really. I mean, it's already doing well in the box office, but I think it would have just been so much better, blown up and been better. Had it just been more focused. Instead of feeling like the story's just going all over the place, and the interjection of complaining about this and that, etc. It was a mess. I was checking my watch halfway through, and even by the time they got back to Barbie Land after the middle part of the movie, I just turned to Megan. I was like, "Sweet Lord, is this movie still going?" It was just too long. They could have cut that thing. Like, they could have easily cut 30 minutes of that movie up and made that movie way shorter. Yeah, I might be the only person who feels like Greta Gerwig is a little bit of an overrated director. But yeah, I guess that's just me.
I don't know how much I care for Greta Gerwig. I think this is actually the first thing I've seen by her, but like, I know my mom really liked Little Women by Greta Gerwig, but I never watched it.
Yeah.
I actually, while I might agree with some pacing issues, I gave it a 4 out of 5 because, like I mentioned earlier, I really like the way she directed the Barbie world and made it feel like a toy setup. And I thought, I appreciate that approach. I think honestly, the direction falls apart when they try to shove in, like you mentioned, those opinions and all of that, instead of focusing on what I mentioned at the beginning with the story, instead of really focusing on what made Barbie unique.
You know what? I'll even go out on a limb and say, had they cut just the real world aspect out of this entire movie, I think it would have been better. You probably could have gotten away with it. I understand like the real world plays a part in like the story itself, but you probably could have cut the entire real world stuff out and just kept it in Barbie Land.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. That'd change a lot of the story, but I'm not disagreeing with you there, because I definitely don't think Ken needed to go to the real world, and I think you could have brought definitely more emotional impact. I keep coming back to, it should have been about mothers and daughters and Barbies, and that's what it should have been about.
Yeah.
And that's where I take the point off for direction. I thought aesthetically it was very pleasing to look at, except for the real world stuff. I think they intentionally muted the colors in the real world to kind of make it gray compared to Barbie Land.
Yeah.
But I really appreciated her almost whimsical touch to it, like when the car flips over and cartoon clouds of dust pop up. Like, I appreciated those little elements, and so I gave it a 4 out of 5, but it definitely wasn't, you made the comparison to Oppenheimer. It was definitely no Christopher Nolan deft touch of direction, that's for sure.
Exactly.
So moving into It Factor.
I was wrong. It should have been a 5. I gave it a 4. And that was just mostly because I wanted to see how good it would do, because we did see it opening weekend. So, and and they were like it was starting to look like there was some like inkling like this thing could actually not do good. um Man, I was just wrong. Let's just start out obviously by saying this is arguably, I'm trying to think, this will probably go down in history as one of the greatest marketing schemes to ever grace the world.
Oh, and it wasn't even a scheme. Like, it just kind of happened.
Yeah. Also, it wasn't just like it happened, but again, they covered up a lot of what the story was about, and I want to give credit to that. Whether you think it was good or bad, they
Oh, I
covered
thought
up.
you were gonna talk about the Barbenheimer marketing, but
Oh
yeah.
no, that one just
Okay.
came out of nowhere.
Yeah, that one was totally
That was
unexpected.
just good timing, I think, more than anything.
Yes.
Yeah, it definitely should have been a 5 out of 5. Again, I was just I had my doubts about it after seeing it. I was just like, I don't know if this is gonna have that impact, but yeah, I mean, it definitely did. I definitely missed on that one. Should have been a 5 out of 5, but I gave it a 4. So sue me.
Don't encourage them. I gave it a 5 out of 5. Just like the cultural impact already, really, with this stuff of Barbenheimer. Everybody was excited to see this movie. Everybody was talking about this movie, whether it was good or not. It was looking like it was going to have at least an amazing first weekend, and then it went ahead and had an amazing second weekend. I've really, like, at this point, most people I know have seen Barbie. So I think that's wild because I don't remember a movie like that really since Endgame, probably, that most people you talk to have seen Barbie. So
Right.
there have been a lot of people, like, even the people who are like, well, what'd you think? They end up going to see it.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
it's definitely cultural. It's definitely significant. But I also find that most people who see it come back and be like, well, that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you try to warn them of whatever you thought about it, and they usually either come back agreeing or they might disagree on certain aspects of it. But I don't know anybody who's like, yeah, that was the best movie I've ever seen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we'll get into that in final thoughts for sure. All right, let's go ahead and jump into entertainment. Yeah, mine was a 2 out of 10. Just kind of comes down to
Bryce hated it.
Hate's a strong word. I hated
That's
Ant-Man
what-
and I hated Ant-Man Quantumanium.
Okay, I dislike that one
Yeah.
far more than
So
this one.
so again, let's not get emotional about how I've been reviewing this movie, because trust me, there were worse movies this year that I could have lived without seeing besides Barbie. It just comes down to I wasn't entertained, honestly. Like I said, I was on board for the first 20 minutes. I was enjoying that. And then basically once they go into the real world, I just kind of checked out. Like I wasn't interested in the story. I wasn't interested in the character arcs. And even some of the bright spots that there were at times, it just wasn't enough to pull me back in. I was checking my watch by the end of the movie. Not even the end of the movie. It was just kind of entering the final act of the movie, and I just did not care what happened. I definitely could have lived without seeing this in theaters. I don't think it's worth a movie ticket personally, but obviously I'm in a minority of people in this as it blows up in the box office. So yeah, I wasn't really entertained, I feel, but it's definitely not the worst movie this year. So let's, calm down. Calm down a little bit with the hate. It's not that bad. But yeah,
we're getting called Nazis for this one.
Yeah.
So.
Oops,
am I allowed to sing?
That
Bleep
brings
that.
my final score to a 23 out of 50. Why don't you give me your entertainment final score and we can go into final thoughts.
Okay, I gave it a 6 because, like I mentioned, I actually think this is one of the funniest movies I've seen this year. I don't remember
that
laughing.
Hurts. Oh.
I know.
Hold on,
but
I'm gonna go back through our movies real quick to see if there's a funny
Yeah.
There's got to be something more funny than this.
Well, remember that you and I have very different senses of humor.
That's true.
I laughed a lot at this movie. I did enjoy the first act. I kind of enjoyed the second act, and then the third act really was a struggle to get through. It had some emotionally punchy scenes, I guess. but my enjoyment came from, I laughed quite a bit during this movie. Like, it was stupid funny, and I find stupid funny often very funny. With the like Mojo Dojo Casa house, I was dying. Like,
that was kind of clever.
like, you don't need to say, like, I was laughing. So there were just enough of those in there for me to raise my enjoyment above average. Yeah, so I had a 6 out of 10 for my enjoyment level, which brought my final score to a 39.
That's ridiculously high. Oh my gosh.
Is that, am I on the right one?
That feels really high. It is.
Yeah.
It feels really high.
39. I mean,
okay, I'm gonna name off a couple movies here. Okay, Dungeons and Dragons.
I actually laughed more at Barbie. I did laugh at Dungeons and Dragons.
Really?
I laughed more at Barbie. Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
I don't remember laughing at that one.
I know, me neither. Into the Spider-Verse.
I chuckled a couple times.
Okay, that's fair. Super Mario Bros.
I did laugh. You know what? That might be a contender. I did laugh quite a bit at that movie. But also, I'm not saying I laughed more. I'm saying I laughed quite a bit because it also had a very, to me, very similar meta with a dark edge sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So that is up my alley. I'm like, Mario felt like it was made for the people who played Mario, in the same way that a lot of the humor in Barbie was for people who played with Barbie. I didn't play with Barbie, but my sisters did. And like, the weird Barbie is the one that you cut the hair and draw on it and throw it away. And I'm like, yeah, I watched my sisters do that to Barbie. So like, I think it's a very similar sense of humor. I'm not sure. I would have to watch Mario again to see which one I found funnier, but there was no blue star character talking about the endless void or anything like that. But I loved that character in Mario. Anyways, but yeah.
Beau is Afraid.
I hated that movie. I didn't laugh at that movie. I'm not watching that movie ever again.
Man, I would rewatch it just for the heck of it. Why not? All right.
Although it's starting to look like it takes place in real world Los Angeles, but that's
fair. That's true. All right. Let's just dive into some final thoughts and we'll wrap this one up.
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead. Why not?
Okay. I feel like I've kind of covered my final thoughts.
You did.
I appreciate the humor. I appreciated the approach to this movie. I just feel like in the end it was unnecessarily political. I'm not saying that the message was inherently bad. I'm not saying that anything in it was wrong, but I'm saying that this should have been a movie about the significance of Barbie to women and the multiple generations that have played with her. And instead, we spent the final act focusing on the patriarchy. And it just feels out of place. Like, maybe even bring that in the second movie if we really need to have Barbie tell that story. But I don't think the patriarchy is Barbie's story. And that's where my problem lies with it. I think Barbie was overshadowed in her own movie.
That is well put, actually. I didn't think of it like that. I mean, same idea, but that was well put.
Oh, thank you. Because yeah, I'm not going to try to enhance that point. I think that is my ultimate point. They try to like make Barbie come out the victor, but at the end, I'm going, why was the patriarchy even in it? And that's like, I'm not talking about Barbie or Barbie's significance. I'm talking about why was the patriarchy in that movie? So yeah, that's my final thought.
Yeah, I pretty much line up with a lot of that. I think what surprises me most about this movie is how many people I'm seeing like singing its praises, and like I know you and me seem like for the most part disagree on the movie as a whole, where we lined up on it. And so it's not it's not directed at you in particular, but like, it's just some people I don't see how you view this as a great, like, phenomenal movie. Like this.
Oh, well, I know you're not talking about me because I didn't view it that way.
Right, exactly. Like, because we've already talked about this. Like, I don't know. I'm first of all, I'm surprised of how well it's doing. I got that wrong, so shame on me. But I don't really get like what people are seeing in this movie that I must be missing. Like like if I had a daughter, obviously she would want to go see this movie. I don't know if I would take her to see this movie because
No, I totally agree.
I just
totally
don't
agree with you.
think it would be. I don't think it'd be fruitful, and it would honestly skew. I think it has some good messages within the movie, but they're so overshadowed by bad messages for younger girls. It just, in my humble opinion, I just don't think it's the best thing for them. And it got the PG-13 rating, but even there was some stuff in here that was just like,
It didn't need to be there.
I don't know if that's good for younger girls to see personally. And that's, whatever. That's just where I line up on it. Yeah, there's some people I think that are just trying to justify and like act smarter, as if they like understood something in this movie that no one else did. It's like, oh, they actually make some good points. It's like, no, it wasn't that good.
So here's the thing about that is that those good points were in that little rant speech. But that's where it's where it started and stopped. It wasn't represented in the script outside of that really at all. I felt like it wasn't like they mentioned the body image issues that Barbie caused or might have caused or whatever your stance on that is. But then there was no like discussion about how the real world effect of like we should look at Barbie this way.
Right. That's a really good point that you make, because they don't have a solution to the problems. Like, you know what their solution was? Their solution was Barbies are back in control. Kens want a little bit of power? Nah, you guys can go to the bottom of the food chain. Oh, so this is basically just turning into a dictatorship.
The reverse patriarchy.
Like it's the reverse of patriarchy. So you're gonna answer the solution to your problem with the exact same problem, just on the other foot. Like
right.
It's like
I definitely felt that way at the end too, that we went from the male-led universe to female-led universe. But there was, I guess they could say, like, the one compromise they made was letting a Ken be part of, I don't even remember, but like they wouldn't give him a spot on the Supreme Court.
Right. And again, like, I know people will come out and say like, oh, well, that's just what it's like for women nowadays. It's like, okay, like, yeah, sure. But like,
okay, and if it is, wouldn't it have been prudent of this to offer a solution?
Right. And like the solution would have been, which I thought that's where the movie was heading at one point. I was like, oh man, this would actually kind of save the ending for me, where it's actually because again, they decided instead of making it about like Barbie, they decided to make it about the patriarchy and how awful men are. And so like a good way to have ended it would have been like, okay, maybe this is a good attempt to show like, men and women serve different roles and they do things better than one another. And maybe this is a good time to show like, hey, we kind of need each other in this situation. No one's better than the other. We all can do things better than certain people can. And like, we need to find a way to come together and like make that work in a society, because we need each other. We can't live without each other. And they just totally went the opposite way with that. And and what frustrates me, again, that's what frustrates me, is like there's no solution to any of this. It's just dictatorship. Like, we're gonna run it this way and you guys get no say in it. And I would be saying the same exact thing if it was the other way around. Like, I hate when people write these stories and think we know that we're better. We can't show you the solutions we actually have, but we're gonna take control because we just know better. Like, it would be better this way. But there's nothing there to show that it would be. There's no solution, and it just feels like that's gonna damage a lot of views on how younger girls view the world, and not even just men, just people around them. Like, that just feels like it's gonna do a lot more damage than good. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just like this isn't like as bad as Ben Shapiro has made the movie out to be, but it's definitely not.
Who's Ben Shapiro? I don't listen to right wing.
Listen, we've already dipped our whole entire body into the political pool. We might as well just full send it at this point.
I mean, we've now done Sound of Freedom and Barbie, so
yeah. At
we're
that
basically
point,
right-wing extremists.
Yeah, basically, even though, even though we admit there's good messages in here, but whatever. This movie isn't worth your ticket, in my opinion. I don't even think it's worth a watch. Like, the only reason it's going to have a cultural stay, I think, is just because of the marketing. It was perfect timing and just good marketing. I don't think this movie will at all stand the test of time. It's forgettable, and it's just it's whatever. I'm tired of talking about it.
No, I kind of agree with you on I don't think it will stand the test of time, but where I really agree with you was when you said that you wouldn't bring your daughter to see it.
Yeah.
And that to me is its ultimate failing, is that the Barbie movie is not suitable for 6 to 12-year-olds.
Yeah, I totally agree. Not just girls, but even boys, like just kids in general, probably not appropriate.
I definitely think, and I've said it before, whether I can't remember if I said it on here, but taking the Toy Story approach to this movie would have made it possibly as endearing as Toy Story.
Right.
But instead, it's just another piece of political commentary.
Right. And God knows we need more of those in cinema. Ugh.
Yep. And that's it. Like, if you had put the Disney label on this, I wouldn't have been surprised. Actually, the special effects are too good for Disney. So
as I say, let's not tamper with these special effects compared to Disney. Come on.
But I think that is all I have to say about this movie at this point.
I'm kind of checked out and done talking about this.
I've already
movie.
said too much.
I was gonna say, you took a lot more. You took a lot more of the headway to talk about the deeper stuff of this movie. So good for you.
I also, I mean, I wanted to reflect it. Like, we talked about our scores, and there's differences in our scores, and while you're harsher, I'm not sure you're wrong, and I'm more generous, but I'm not sure I'm wrong. It's just, I didn't like the story of this movie. I thought this movie had serious flaws, but I tried to find, like, I did enjoy some of it, and there were these things about it that I appreciate.
Right.
But overall, I'm not gonna like pre-order the Blu-ray. I'm not gonna get the special edition. I'm not gonna sit down and have Barbie night. But also, I'm a cis white male, so
you're evil anyway. This movie was.
My opinion does not matter.
This is the exact reason the movie was made, Tim.
Yes, because I am the problem.
Exactly, and don't you forget about it.
Oh, we just lost so many listeners.
With that being said, let's just close this thing out. Thank you guys for listening and watching this episode. Go ahead and leave your review of Barbie. What did you think about it? Are you an oppressor, or are you someone who is oppressed? I feel that's...
If we haven't completely turned you off to us yet, tune in next time for our Oppenheimer discussion.
I was gonna say, yeah, I can't wait for the Oppenheimer one, but leave a review of Barbie. Also, get ready for Oppenheimer and leave a review of that. Go ahead and follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify to listen to everything, and
Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram and Facebook. I'm on Twitter, so follow me on that if you care at all to be on Twitter for that. And yeah, hit up our link tree for the review. I'm gonna try to be better about posting that in the captions. And yeah, that's all I got. Tim, anything else?
I have nothing else. I'm
good for you. Good. I'm done talking. Let's go eat now. Thanks guys for listening. We will see you guys in the next episode.
See ya.